I want to begin this section by taking a quick look at the political boundaries of Europe at the end of World War II. On the east side of the map, you'll notice the Soviet Union and all of these countries that are shaded the same color: Poland, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, Romania, Bulgaria. These are all the countries that the Soviet Union occupied as it was pushing the German army out of its territory and back into Germany. You'll also notice that the nation of Germany at this point in time was divided into two sections. East Germany, which was occupied by the Soviet Union as well, and West Germany. This was part of the agreement that was made at the Yalta Conference toward the end of World War II. According to the Yalta Conference, Germany would be divided into four sections. One section would be occupied by the Soviet Union, and the three other sections would be occupied by the United States, Great Britain, and France. Eventually, the US, Great Britain, and France would actually unite their three sections into the single nation of West Germany. Another agreement that was made at Yalta was that the Soviet Union would allow Poland to elect its own government. Well, the Soviet Union does not do that, and it actually refuses, or I should say, the leader of the Soviet Union, Joseph Stalin, refuses to withdraw his troops from Poland and Czechoslovakia and these other countries. Now, why did he do this? Well, it was actually very simple. Germany had invaded Russia twice in less than 50 years. First during World War I and again during World War II. And by occupying Poland and Czechoslovakia and Hungary and these other nations, Stalin has created a buffer zone that Germany will actually have to get through before they reach the Soviet Union. However, when the United States looks at this map, they don't see that. What they see is the Soviet Union trying to spread communism to other parts of the world. And as most Americans saw it, the Soviet Union had already spread communism to Poland and these other places by refusing to leave after World War II ended. And this sets up the beginning of the Cold War. During the Cold War, the goal of the United States will be to stop the further spread of communism. So, as I've already said, Germany was divided at the end of World War II. East Germany was occupied by the Soviet Union, the USSR, and West Germany was occupied by the US, Great Britain, and France. Now, look very quickly at this map. You'll notice that the capital of Germany, which is Berlin, was completely inside the Soviet section of Germany. It was completely inside of East Germany. However, the city of Berlin was actually divided up into four sections as well. There was a sector of Berlin that was given to the Soviet Union. There was a sector that was given to the United States, and there was a sector given to Great Britain and a sector given to France. So not only is the country of not only is the country of Germany divided, but its capital city is divided up as well. So during this time period, the United States begins to pursue a policy known as containment. This policy was created by an American government official named George Kennan. He had been an American diplomat to the Soviet Union. And he argues that to defeat the Soviet Union, to keep the Soviet Union from spreading communism, all we have to do is to contain them. Keep the Soviet Union from spreading any further. Keep communism from spreading any further. And as long as we can do that, communism will die on its own. Because communism, in the long run, simply does not work. So, for the next 30 years, this will be the foreign policy of the United States to prevent communism from spreading to other parts of the world. Very quickly, where does the term Cold War come from? Well, it's called the Cold War because it never actually heated up into a real war. It was simply a competition between the United States and the Soviet Union. We were trying to keep communism from spreading, and the Soviet Union was trying to spread communism to other parts of the world. But the Soviet Union and the United States never went to war with each other. There were times when we would support two sides of a war, but the two nations never actually went to war with each other. Now, the first example of the American policy of containment is the Truman Doctrine. So, in the nation of Greece, communist rebels were trying to overthrow the Greek government. And the Soviet Union was trying to pressure Turkey into accepting a communist government. Now, why was the Soviet Union interested in Turkey? Well, it's very simple. The Soviet Union always had a problem with finding a warm water harbor. A harbor that did not freeze during the winter. As you can imagine, frozen water is typically pretty hard on ships. One region that typically does not freeze during the winter is the Black Sea. And that is where Turkey comes in. Turkey controls two straits, the Bosphorus and the Dardanelles Straits. I may have gotten those backwards, but that is where they're located. And if the Soviet Union controlled this area, then they would be able to send their ships through these straits into the Mediterranean Sea, and then from there into the Atlantic Ocean. So this is why the Soviet Union is interested in Turkey. The United States decided, under President Harry Truman, decided that it would provide military aid in the form of funds and soldiers to keep these two countries from falling to communism. They would assist Greece and Turkey in their fight against communism. So the U.S. Congress agrees to provide $400 million to assist Greece and Turkey, and the U.S. also sends soldiers to serve as military advisors. So American troops will not actually be fighting in these countries, but they'll help train the Greek and the Turkish forces. Very quickly, let's take a look at this political cartoon. In this cartoon, you see Uncle Sam, who represents the United States, holding a bag of money that has a tag on it labeled Aid to Greece and Turkey. And he's blindfolded and trying to find his way across a log that is labeled New American Foreign Policy. And this represents the fact that the United States is moving down a road that it's really never gone down before. The United States, by tradition, is an isolationist country. We have always tried to stay out of other countries' issues. Well, now we see communism as an international threat, and Great Britain and France have been destroyed during World War II. So they obviously are not going to be able to stop the spread of communism on their own. So if anybody is going to stop the spread of communism, it's going to be the United States. So for the first time, we are taking on a major role in global affairs, which was really a new experience for the United States. Okay, the second example of the United States and its policy of containment is the Marshall Plan. Now, as I said earlier, Europe, not just Great Britain and not just France, but most of Europe had been absolutely devastated by World War II. Cities were just a big pile of rubble. It was terrible, and the people who were living amongst these ruins were not very well off. Now, President Truman and his Secretary of State, George C. Marshall, both believed that communism was attractive to people who were living in misery. Now, one of the key ideas behind communism was you work for the government and the government provides what you need. In the long run, this does not work. Okay, imagine if I gave a test to a class and instead of giving each student the grade that he made or she made, I took the class average and gave that to everyone. And let's say the class average was a 78. If you made a 100, but you got a 78, you wouldn't be very happy and you wouldn't try very hard on the next test. If you made a 15, but you got a 78, well, why should you try next time? You didn't try last time and you passed. And over time, that class average is going to slowly go down. And the same thing happens in communist countries. You don't earn what you work for. You simply receive what you and your family needs from the government and nothing more. So in the long run, communism does not work, but it's attractive for a people that are living in misery. So under the Marshall Plan, the United States provides assistance in rebuilding Europe. They rebuild factories so people can get back to work. They rebuild bridges and highways, and by doing this, they're making communism less and less attractive. And as a byproduct, they're preventing it from spreading into this new area.